Dear Diary, Part 2. Long time since I made my first Dear Diary. Hope I can make more. Today my Dear Diary is waking up with my coffee and thinking about some ironic thoughts and wondering if other humans on Earth actually think this, and if they do, if they think like me in this, and if they do, uh, why don't I and the rest of you really do something about it? Do something about it involves more not doing anything than it does anything, according to my thesis. So first of all, here's the first thought. I always get these hypnagogic state thoughts when I'm waking up, half awake, half asleep. I was just thinking, dreaming, seeing a blonde-haired, toupee guy pursing his lips, very bigoted, very much of a liar and an exaggerator. I think you know him, his name's Donald R. Trump. And this really old guy who talks like this and can't remember what he just said a minute ago. I think his name's Biden. And then some woman, I don't know who her name is, who was Prime Minister for 5 days and then resigned, even though she knew she was going to resign when she was put into office, because it was just part of a due process so that they could put another person into office that they couldn't have done if she hadn't have resigned. So that was just a game. And now maybe we have a new Prime Minister in Britain. And then I thought about all the other leaders of the world, especially America, and then Russia and China, and looking at people like Putin and whoever is commanding things in the European countries who decide. I would assume Klaus Schwab of the Economic Forum and the head of the Grand Templar Order, which has been seeking to control the world for thousands of years, and controlling most of it if it wasn't for their enemies, the assassins. We'll talk about another day, because there is more than one secret society, like Templars. Masons, forget about them, they don't know what they're doing. They're basically a load of gouty, red-nosed, wine-drinking, old expats from around the world in different countries who like to meet, say yo-ho-ho, do some ritual things with aprons, and none of them have any real influence. All they do is think they're 33rd degree Masons and raise charity to get to become higher status 33rd degree Masons, like the Prince of this and the Duke of that. Yeah, the keeper of this secret, and I don't know what. Status and status with a badge. But they don't know anything. Speculative Freemasonry contains the hermetic secrets of the world and how the nature of all things. Unfortunately, Freemasons are just too busy looking for business connections, and that's why they become a Freemason. So they don't really know. Templars, however, also don't know, but they have a very, 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 very twisted belief, such as the belief in a Christian God and things like that. Anyway, what I was thinking that humans are idiots. I'm an idiot. Sometimes I look for my glasses and they're on top of my head. And I make very, very rash decisions sometimes, and also I do make a lot of mistakes. And I wouldn't consider myself, although more capable than the ones who are doing it, but I wouldn't consider myself capable or wise enough, and in fact no human on earth that I know I would consider capable or wise enough to make the national decisions and nationwide and what do you call that, continent-wide decisions that are being made by these people. So my main thought was, in my hypnagogic state, was the cartoon image of Donald Trump, Putin, Li Jinping, or whatever his name is, the absence of all the faces that we've been taught to know and blame, and the absence of news about all the things that was supposed to be a real threat before the pandemic, like North Korea. Nobody ever hears about it anymore. The absence of human rights abuses and terrible events that are going on in the world, such as Burma, The war in the Congo, because of the uranium, the biggest uranium source there for nuclear weapons, that has been causing wars in the Congo ever since the Second World War and before. So the war in the Congo that's been hidden from the news because that's where abuses are being made by mercenaries paid for by the United Nations and Western world countries and allied nations countries, and also where Russia and China are trying to get in because they're fighting to get the uranium or plutonium. No, uranium. They have a uranium, and it's the biggest seam in the world. So it's the biggest source of uranium in the world. And so, everybody's focusing now on a small little country called the Ukraine, when actually there's a lot of wars going on around that are directly related and they don't want you to see. So the Ukraine is a focal point, so you don't notice that there are atrocities being performed with the knowledge and the assistance of the United Nations peacekeeping forces, and with paid mercenaries called NOCs, NOCs, non-officials, which means if they get caught, the government who hired them does not accept knowing them or responsibility. If you work as a NOC, you go in to do a mission for a government. If you get caught, you're on your own. You're on your own. You are a disposable asset. Yeah, you're not indisposable. You're an asset, but you're a disposable asset. I know all about disposable assets, being one, and meaning know all about what it's like to be a disposable asset. And in fact, we as population and citizens are disposable assets, which is why many countries have sprayed their own people with germ warfare tests. Great Britain did. If you look on my YouTube, Ajahn Spencer, youtube.com/Ajahn Spencer channel, you'll find I did make a video, small documentary, about how Great Britain, other countries too, but how Britain in that case performed germ warfare tests on its own people in the 1970s, and in fact, and 80s as well. I probably still do it, but I actually got sprayed. I remember it happening. So my main thought with the Dear Diary was, I just saw cartoon caricatures of Putin, whoever, Biden, Trump, all these people, yeah? Like exaggerated cartoon caricatures of their faces. Think about their behavior and their speech. And thinking, shit, we have loads of powerful weapons belonging to loads of supposedly powerful systems in different powerful countries, and we've got some complete idiots, complete imbeciles who work on their own personal opinions and personal needs, and are making decisions that are changing the world and affecting the people around the planet. Yeah? And we are being ruled by and legislated by a bunch of unenlightened, ignorant idiots. And they call themselves politicians. I'm sorry, but none of them have a degree in politics or even social studies, or nothing that you would need to be a politician, not even in finance. Most of them are just the blue-blooded inheritors of billions from rich family lineages. Yeah, everybody thinks JFK and the Kennedys were such great, they were the dream family of presidents. Rubbish. That's a perception you were fed. He was against space travel, and then he came out as being the guy who was taking us to the moon as if it was all his idea. Actually, he refused the idea and he was forced into it. He was against it, was John F. Kennedy. Completely against it. He was also much for making war with the Russians than preventing it with the Cuban blockade. Yeah? But he was superseded by his generals. He was also disobeyed because he would have caused Third World War. So John F. Kennedy, the great decisions he made that are famous were not his decisions. He was actually wanting the opposite thing. Yeah, the same thing for the rights of coloured people in America. What he wanted was not what was published, that he was the great human rights worker. He wasn't. The son of a bloody rich family like George Bush and all the Bush families and the Clintons. You think the American dream, anybody can be president. Rubbish. There's a handful of blue-blooded families who can be president, and that's the only people who will ever get to be it. And the only way Donald Trump broke that blue blood lineage, yeah, was with his money, and he really, really upset the balance of America. But he's not a politician. What's he trained in politician? What he does is like my father. My father was a con man, a property developer. He would develop properties using really cheap materials, bribed the surveyor to say that everything was well above quality, and sell it really expensive to rich people. But behind the walls, in the gaps between the walls, and the electric wirings and the bits you couldn't see, it was all cheap crap. And the Trump Tower has also been analysed like that. So like gold plastic facades and stuff. There's no real gold on there. And the water piping and stuff is, real cheap stuff. Just put some gold-plated taps in there and, make the surface look good. So I'd sell it to billionaires on billionaires row in the Trump Tower. He's just a con man. My father was a property developer. So he knows about property. That doesn't mean he knows how to solve the social security, medical treatment for people who don't have a job in America, like we have in England, social security. He doesn't know how to deal with a pandemic. Definitely knows nothing about military strategy or geopolitics. He's a businessman. He's an industrialist. And if you look at the leaders of most countries, they know absolutely jack shit about politics, and they do not have a degree in politics. They're financiers or just rich. They're mostly property moguls, to be honest. Yeah. Thaksin of Thailand, who was Prime Minister for so long, he was a property mogul, and he was the guy who brought mobile phone technology into Thailand, made it mainstream, people using mobile smartphones, and made billions out of it, of course. And he's also the first guy who made one egg in Thailand cost 5 baht instead of 3 baht. The first time in history inflation went up, where an egg became almost unaffordable to the poor people of the northeast. Anyway, the basic thought was for my dear diary was, we're all ruled by a bunch of idiots. I mean real idiots who are not qualified in political sciences. But we seem to be, because I actually believe presidents just sign a paper that somebody much more intelligent has prepared and gone through all the lawyers and the courts and got the rules made, and he just has to sign it. Because presidents are basically idiots who sit at desks and sign bills that they are being given and advised to sign, because they don't understand jack shit. So who really rules? The advisors. Who makes a decision? The king of the kingdom, or his advisor, or his horoscope in the olden days, his magician and his horoscope, his astrologer, right? Those people were much more powerful than kings, because the kings did what they advised. So a king is just a puppet doing what his advisor tells him, or what his ministry tells him. Yeah. And that's what's scary. So that was my Dear Diary morning thought. Going to start doing more Dear Diaries. Some will be philosophical, some will be like this one, semi-political. It's not political, but the main thought was just, I wonder if people realize just how stupid these idiots are who are controlling countries and going to war with each other and causing trade wars and actually flipping the economy and deciding. People like Klaus Schwab think they can change the world. What they don't realize is they can't make every country behave how they want. And not every country is a member of their stupid World Economic Forum. Yeah, I mean, you look at Russia; it's a member of the United Nations. Yeah, and so is America, and so is Germany, and so Russia and Germany and America and all the rest of our allied nations, NATO countries, they're all stood in the United Nations as co-members. At the same, in the same mouthful, they're all at war with each other in Ukraine and in the Congo and other places, like I said, because Ukraine's a distraction, so you don't see what they're doing elsewhere, to be honest. So I was thinking about that as I woke up as well. Do people really realize what's going on? And why do people actually, because I don't believe, why do people actually vote for, believe in these people? You know, I mean, how could you put Boris in as Prime Minister? He's an idiot. He doesn't even comb his hair, that doesn't matter, but he's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. You can't put the fate of a country and its people in the hands of such an idiot. And by the way, none of the other contenders are capable either. They're all idiots because humans, they're bloody idiots. I'm an idiot. Everybody's an idiot. And so, what's the point in having a system when the only thing you can have ruling it is a bunch of idiots? So, yeah, but what would happen without a system? Everything would go to chaos. Well, concrete jungles would, yeah. Electricity would, but what did we have before we had TV and electricity and entertainment on the TV and the internet? What did we have? Well, we had motor cars, we had boats, we had things we could do like aeroplanes and travel, yeah. But we didn't have feet on the ground and Facebook individuals taking news articles with their mobile phones on the ground and uh, um, journalists not even leaving their home anymore because they find all the news articles they want on Facebook from what normal people share. So there's nobody out in the street down on the ground except for us. So what is news these days? News is whatever the journalists could find on Facebook that was trending and getting lots of views. That's not news. And it's news we've seen. Well, I think I'll sign off with my last waking thought. Now, these Dear Diaries are not supposed to go anywhere. They're just sharing my morning thoughts, basically. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're puzzled. Sometimes they're inspirational and might have a deep truth, a deep realization. I just share them all. I'm going to start sharing them all. And so, I'm just wondering, the world is ruled by idiots. Why don't we do anything about it? Well, probably the same reason I don't. Because I alone am powerless. And if we all marched into the capital cities and stormed down the parliaments, then you'd just have somebody else put themselves in and say, right, I'm going to sort this all out for you and clean up this mess. And the next thing it'd be him, his family, sustaining themselves and making sure his descendants get to stay in power. And all of a sudden we become a tread upon people again. So what's the solution? Look at nature. What's nature? I just watched a bird come in, go into a tree, eat a berry. I thought, well, if I was Farmer Giles, the conditioned human, I would think, that bird, he's just come over my wall into my garden, and he's stealing bananas and berries from my tree. Now, first of all, the garden was never mine. Mother Nature grows trees, and the fruits on the trees, they're not intended for or belong to a specific person. They don't have an owner. And so what happens is the bird is just flying over a wall, a thing we humans call a wall, landing in a tree and eating a berry. You know, he's not invading my garden and stealing berries and bananas from my trees, and then my berries and my bananas. No. Mother Nature makes those berries for any animal, living creature to eat, and it needs that so that the seeds fall on the floor and it can propagate more trees, have more baby trees. So we help each other like that. There's no such thing as stealing, because there's no such thing as mine or yours. That's imaginary. Humans invent it, and it belongs to everybody and everything. It's there to be exploited and used? Maybe not, but we exploit and use it. All living beings do. Yeah? And that includes the trees, because the bird and the insect exploit the tree and the flower to get the nectar and the fruit. But the tree exploits the bee and the bird, because when the bird comes and eats the fruit, the seed falls to the floor. And when the bee comes to take the nectar to make its honey with, yeah, the pollen of the flower sticks to the bee's legs, and it goes on to a next plant, and the plant gets to propagate itself and sustain itself into the future through evolution, yeah, through the process of evolution and survival. And so I would say we don't use others, we make use of each other in a communal way in nature. It's give and take. Whereas in human nature, it is not give and take. It is take everything you can and try not to give anything, or give as little as you can and take as much as you can. And this is where human thinking is completely against nature, and that the real lesson that you can learn is to watch Mother Nature. Yeah? And I think I'd like to make a talk about that separately, because this is my Morning Dear Diary. And, well, it's not my Morning Dear Diary, it is a Morning Dear Diary with me talking. But I'd like to talk about animal nature, instinct, human nature, and human instinct. But I want to make a separate podcast about that, and the concepts of wrong and right and sinful and ownership, and how we humans view the world, and how animals they don't view the world, how they perceive the world, and perception itself. And I think that's going to be a Quantum Dhamma podcast. Quantum Dhamma meaning it's not pure Buddhism, but it's what I've understood through the Buddha's teachings and the Buddha Dhamma and my meditations. But it's not a religious Buddhist realization. So I think I'd like to talk about that in one of my next talks. Not my next talk, but one of my upcoming talks is about nature, the true law and rule of nature, and the abnormal, unnatural rule and law of man. And it's opened up my eyes thinking about that a lot lately. I'm using nature as my teacher, and looking at human nature and the plastic world we live in, the concrete jungle and the imaginary system of rule and governance and trade and exchange and money and possessions, personal possessions and stuff. That where did we go wrong? How did we get into this mess in the first place? Well, when civilization began, greed and possessions and money and exchange and politics began, and so on, until we got into this mess we are in now. And we're definitely in a mess, because if you watch birds flying in and out of where I'm looking at, eating their berries and going about their business, and the insects and the ants' nests, and you see a lot of collaboration and cooperation and coexistence. Yes, you still see death and decay, but you don't see unnecessary cruelty and unnecessary aggression, only when it's necessary. You very, very rarely see human traits or the human nonsense in nature. And so nature actually tells us how we should be living. And most people don't want to admit it, because what it involves is you can't flip a switch to put the light on. You need to light a candle or what do you call that, an oil lamp or something. And it means you can't just go to the macro and buy some fake fresh meat that's not so fresh and has been injected with red dye to make it look appetizing, and other substances to stop it from discolouring after it's been stood there for 4 days on the shelf with people prodding it and touching it. And you can't buy stuff in a can that's actually just starch mixed with some chalk, and they're telling you it's actually creamy milk, real cream. No, no, you'd be able to go maybe to a marketplace and swap you have a salt flat, so you swap a few sacks of salt with a dried fish merchant, some dried meat and some vegetables and some rice. Or you might be a fisherman and have so much fish that you can dry some to eat over the long period, eat some fresh, and what's rest you swap for the things you need, because you're not a rice farmer. You need rice, you need salt, you need this and that. Yeah? And trade and barter. Without this Pharisee in the middle, the money man, the tax man, and this thing called money, and give a price on everything. That's just so the middleman can come in and tax everybody on everything. All you really need to say is, I've got a sack of salt. I see you've been trading already. You've got some dried fish. You've got some rice, dried rice for cooking. You've got some oats. You've got some potatoes. I will give you a sack of salt for 5 kilos of potatoes, 40 dried saltfish, a bag of rice. Oh, all right then. And there you go. You've swapped your salt, and you've got the things you need to make for your dinner, and you've still got salt to make it tasty. What do you need money for? All you need is an agreement between you, who's got something somebody else needs, and somebody else who's got something you need. It's called swap shop. And that's how we actually did things before we started inventing a medium. At first we used to use seashells as money. In Laos they used seashells. And seashells, because there's no ocean in Seychelles, the seashells came from the time when Laos was under the water, the country of Laos, Laos, and North Thailand. After that they started using silver, when the Romans started that off. Coming along the Silk Route, they started to use silver when silver was discovered, it was used as a medium of exchange. Before that, you just swapped goods. And we've done that for tens of thousands of years. The money thing we've only been doing for a few hundred years. And look how many falls we've had. We've had fall of civilization once already, and now about to happen again. And we've had so many economic disasters and poverty, and countries fallen because of economics. Greece fell, Turkey fell, Sri Lanka has fallen. But if it was just swap shop, instead of having to use money and have trade embargoes with assholes like the UN putting themselves in the middle, causing a trade embargo, whilst still Putin, the Chinese guy, Li Jinping, whatever his name is, Biden, they're all still members of the United Nations, stood there in the podiums and having meetings about other issues apart from the Ukraine. But on the Ukraine, they're all at war. So what's the United Nations for? How can you have 3 members or 4 member countries at war with each other and still allow them to come into the United Nations, talk about their trade agreements? You should ban them all and say, unless you stop making war. The United Nations was created after the Second World War to make sure this never happens again. But when its member states do it, they don't say anything. So dissolve the United Nations as well. That's another of my Dear Diary morning thoughts. Just dissolve it, because it is doing absolutely nothing apart from making this war continue, because they're not allowing them to use big weapons. You have to walk about in trenches with a couple of tanks and a couple of drones. For God's sake, they've got absolutely hundreds and hundreds of state-of-the-art military aeroplanes, equipment, missiles. They could just wipe out the Ukraine in one single day. They could just trundle in there, the Russians. They're just doing trench warfare, which hasn't been practiced since 1914, since people got trench foot, where your feet rot, and where so many people died in the trenches. Trench warfare doesn't work. So the fact they're showing you drone footage of 3 soldiers running along a trench, and they've dug trenches around, is absolutely ridiculous. Digging trenches in 2022 and fighting with a few tanks and a few howitzers. Maybe they're just trying to get rid of a few of their older military equipment, because I don't see they're using any of their state-of-the-art equipment. Could be over in a day. They've got the Russians and the Allies. They've both got enough. The Russians have got enough military equipment to just trundle in there. Just trundle in. Let the first 30 tanks get blown up, and the other 5,000 tanks and the 3,000 fighter planes just fly over and go and it's gone. They're in. There's nothing stopping them going in from there. They don't want to go in. It's a distraction. They could invade the Ukraine in a single day. Hitler did it so many years ago with much less technology. He invaded Poland, he invaded France, bing, bam, boom, whole countries. Yeah? And these days they're standing in trenches like in the 1418 war, First World War, and the Ukraine. For about a year now, they're still battling each other with the odd shot at a building. Come on, man. Remember Iraq? When the Americans went into Iraq, it was like a 2-day, 3-day operation. Iran was the same. Gaddafi, when they got him, that was a 2-3 day rebellion. Boom. Yeah? No way can you take a year for a little country like the Ukraine against a big country like Russia with all its military assets. It's a 1-day job to invade that country. It was a 1-day job for Germany to invade Poland. It was a 1-day job for them to invade France almost. Just a few days, yeah. Didn't even see it coming. And if Russia was going to invade the Ukraine seriously, they wouldn't have talked about it before. They'd have just done it overnight with nobody expecting anybody to do it. So that's all a ruse. That's to keep you focused on the Ukraine. But what I do is I don't focus on it at all, because I know it's a ruse, a distraction. I know it's fake. I look everywhere else. And I remember Afghanistan was in trouble just before this, so they created the Ukraine distraction, so we don't see what's happening in Afghanistan. Burma had a problem before that. Myanmar has still got a problem. That was all in the news. Now it's not, because of the Ukraine. It's a distraction. The Congo, and there's actually 17 wars in Africa going on in the moment, very, very bad ones. But the Congo is interesting because most people don't know why the problem in the Congo is nothing to do with the gems and the Belgian companies owning the gems and stuff. Well, it is, but it's mainly to do with the uranium seam there. That's the biggest uranium seam in the world, so it's the biggest source of nuclear warheads in the world. And Russia, China, and the Western NATO nations are all vying and fighting wars there through mercenaries, hiding behind mercenaries so nobody knows it's actually governments who are trying to fight to control whoever gets to be the puppet minister of the Congo so that they can get their hands on the uranium. Yeah. So what you should be looking at is not the Ukraine, is who is fighting each other over the uranium in the Congo, because they need that for nuclear supremacy. So, dear diary, slightly political. If I wake up a bit drowsy in the morning, I usually have more negative thoughts, and that was one of them, this thought that we're ruled by idiots. People like Donald Trump and Biden and Putin making decisions for the whole world, putting the whole world in problems just because of their pride and egos and lack of wisdom. Why the heck do we allow ourselves to be ruled by idiots? I don't even go. I have rules here as a foreigner, as an immigrant. I have to go to immigration every 90 days and once a year to renew my visa. I haven't been for 3 years. I said, fuck off. Fuck you all. I don't recognize your system. Throw me out if you want, but I am not complying. I came here to live my life in peace, not to present myself to the cop shop every 90 days, put my hand up and say, here I am for roll call, sir. You invite people to come and retire in Thailand or come and live in Thailand and bring all their money with them and come and be to the land of smiles. Once you get here, you have to put your hand up at the police station because the immigration is the police. In Germany, you go to immigration to extend your visa. You go to the town hall and speak with a normal person. Well, police are normal persons as well, but you don't speak to a policeman in a uniform. You speak to a civil servant in a shirt or a t-shirt. Yeah. Here, you have to go to a police station, and they look at you down their nose, going, "What are you doing here?" What do you mean, what am I doing here? You people asked us to fucking move here and fucking come and retire here and bring all our money with us. What do you mean, what am I doing here? Stop treating me like a fucking criminal. Your country invited expat retirees to Thailand, which I didn't come as one, but I'm old enough now to call myself one. I actually came as a cultural anthropologist. And I never even knew about expat retirees who go to beer bars and buy themselves a whore as a wife and can't speak Thai and not understand the wife they're married to, who's going to rip them off in the end anyway and take the house they bought in their name. I never did that. I came to Thailand to learn about culture, Buddhism, the ways of the Thais, all the lifestyles, just everything. Yeah. Never even knew there was there was prostitution in Thailand, or that old men came here to buy young girls. I never knew that for years. I was too busy learning the culture and learning the legends and how to read and write Thai. So I didn't know what a fat old expat was. And now I'm over 50, so immigration think I'm a fat old expat. I just see you as an object here to extract money from, and you're not welcome. They don't welcome foreigners, they just want our money. Thailand just wants our money, but they don't respect us. So anyway, they know I don't give a shit. I'm sure they don't want international news incidents, or they also know I'm not a criminal, I don't do anything wrong, and they know. They know I have an amulet business. It's not registered. I opened a tattoo shop on Koh Lanta years ago. Just put up a sign, tattoo. Put my pictures up in the window. I sat there waiting for customers. Sometimes a foreigner would get lost, couldn't find his bungalow. The police would bring them to ask me to help him find his way home, and I would. I didn't have a license or a registered company. I just rented a place and put up a sign and started tattooing. I did that for a few years and nobody ever came in and asked me if I had a business license. People saw me do a very big investment of a 4-story building that was a tattoo shop in Pattaya. I really spent tens of thousands of dollars setting that place up. It failed because they cut up the road and made no access to that street for 5 years long. So I had to close it. There was no way for customers to come. But I was open for a few months first. And do you think I registered a company? No. I just rented a place and then had a sign made, Pattaya Tattoos, with a Hanuman on it. Put that up, fitted the place out, put a Facebook page up, posted pictures of the development of the shop until it was ready, and then opened. Put a tattoo artist in there because I don't tattoo anymore, I'm retired from that, and opened, and started opening and working. Nobody ever came to me to ask me if I had a license for business, and if they did I would say, no, not yet, I've just opened for a 3-month period to see if it works, and if it does I'll make the business license, because there's no point in making a company unless you know that it's going to work. And actually every country almost in the world that is democratic does have a rule saying you can actually, so long as you register within 3 months, you're okay. It's just a civil offence, so you'd get a fine for not registering at the worst. So I'm not even scared of opening a business without registering it. In fact, I've never registered a business except one in Hua Hin, and that's the one where the cops came and tried to extort money from me. Because I'd registered, they knew I was there. But if you don't register, they don't. So, all through my life, I've always opened tattoo shop by just renting a place, opening it, or other shops I've opened, a bar even. Just rent a place and open it. I never had a policeman or a taxman come or a man from the government come and say, excuse me, can I see you've got your business license? Or the taxman say, where's your tax return? You can't ask me for it because I haven't registered the business. Just do it. Believe me, you'd be surprised. Just do it. Unless you've got a nasty neighbour or somebody who hates you, who knows who's going to report you, I guarantee you, nobody's going to, they don't have enough officers walking around the roads checking every shop if they've got a business licence or not. But if you register, then they can check every year if you've renewed it because you're in their database. Same way as my driving licence. I don't have one. I've been driving in Thailand for 30 years. I nearly did one, then I pulled back and said, hey, no, I don't want one. Because I've been driving for 30 years, I get caught without a licence sometimes. It's a fine, it's a civil offence in Thailand. And so if you get caught 50 million times, you never go to prison for driving without a licence. You just pay a fine every time, repeatedly, forever, which usually is about $5. Well, it depends. If you've got a foreigner face and you don't have a clue, they might ask you for $50, 1,000 baht or something. I'll give them 100 baht and drive on and say, I forgot my licence, mate. Can I sort it out right here? We both save time here. 100 baht. Okay, go on, go. And I go. And if you have a licence, you get caught drunk driving, you got caught this, that and the other, after you've been caught 3 or 4 times and given black stars, you have your licence taken away from you. If you drive a bike or a car then, and you get stopped and they see you've had a licence and it's been confiscated because you committed too many offences, driving offences, then you will go to prison for driving without a licence after having it taken away from you by a judge. But if you never made a licence in your whole life and you don't have a driving licence and you get caught 150 times, you never go to prison, you just get a fine. So it's actually better to drive illegally without a driving licence and get a fine every time you're stopped than to get a driving licence and then lose it through driving offences and then go to prison for driving without a licence that you lost. Yeah? You can go to prison if you have a driving licence and you lose it. But if you never had a driving licence and you drive, all you can ever do is receive a small fine. So I said, well, better not to go into their system and have my name in their database. I just drive without a licence and pay the fine every time. Because if I get a licence and I do 4 or 5 offences and lose it and then get caught driving again, I go to prison for driving after having lost my licence. I'd rather just pay a fine for driving without ever having had one. So, being legal, is it better? No, I've never done it. That's why I say I'm a pirate. Oh, hardly ever done it in my life, and a couple of times I did, I regretted it because everything became too expensive to do business with taxmen and this and that and sticking the nose in my business, registration and blah blah. Can't be asked. I'm an anarchist, and I've always done that. Open a restaurant, open a business, open this, open that. Don't register anything, I just rent a place and open it. It's nobody else's business what I do. Definitely not the government. They've never done anything for me, except bully me. Never given me anything. Even when I was in England, got some social security jobless money. That wasn't the government giving me it was the taxpayer. Because they were stealing the money from other workers and giving some to me, and most of it to themselves. So, government's done nothing for me. And I don't see any reason why you should register a business. None of my online businesses are registered. Why should I register them? It's a .com in America, coming through PayPal International to an expat retired in Thailand who is British. So who should I pay tax to? Britain? America? Thailand? Who gets the tax from that? Where is the website? It's in the internet. It doesn't exist on land. So can't tax me on that, I'm afraid. We're not a company. Registered company. What, does that make you trustworthy or what? No. It makes you more expensive. And it makes you liable to the government for confiscating your assets and stuff like that. So don't ever do that. Just be a pirate. Do your business and don't tell them. Don't register. Try it. What are you scared of? This is the thing. They've got you all scared. Scared to do it. You think you go to prison for doing that. You don't. You don't go to prison for opening a shop and forgetting to register it. You can say, I didn't know. It was my first business. I don't know how to go about it. I thought you just opened. If you're a citizen, it's a small business. I thought you don't need a company for a small shop, which you don't. But you do in Thailand if you're a foreigner. So try it if you dare. Open a shop, rent a place, put a sign on, and open a shop. But don't ask permission from anybody to do it. Then you see if in the first few years you're open, if anybody walks in and says, hello, I'm from the government to see if you've registered this business with us or not. I bet you don't. And you won't pay a penny tax. Like I have never. So that's a nice secret for my dear diary. Dear diary. Doing business underground. What should I call this? Dear diary. Registered. What is it? Illegal business establishments. I'm going to have to think of a title for this because I talked of so much stuff. Idiotic politicians taking no notice of governments. But I think the most interesting thing of this Dear Diary morning blah blah is the fact that you can actually just open a business without asking anybody, and believe me, you've got a very slim chance of anybody noticing and coming and hassling you. So I'll finish off with what I'm going to make one of my mottos is Ajahn Spencer signing off with the words, don't forget, be a pirate. Be a pirate.